Hey, Eagle Run 23 here. So I recently was asked to shoot a tool care video for a local gardening group, and I wanted to just kind of share that with you guys. This was a part of some training that they were doing, and since tools are a hobby of mine, we talk about taking care of them and keeping them running good, and even a little bit of restoration. So that's what this video is, and thank you for watching. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you this little tool video. And I love tools. I love things rusty and old, and I love some of the new technology that's out there. I just really like tools. So I'm hoping today that I can kind of shed some light on some things for you, maybe show you a couple things you didn't know, and we can discuss some tools today. So we're going to start with pruners and clippers, and we're going to talk about how those guys function and how you clean them, how you maintain them, how you sharpen them, even a little bit of full restoration conversation. I got a couple different types of pruners here we'll talk about. We've got some shovels and some spades. I have a really cool weeder here, some wood handles on an axe, and some other pruners over there. So let's first start with pruners, because that is probably, other than your shovel, that is probably one of the main items that you're going to be fooling around with. And let's start with my favorite. These are made by a company called Corona, and you'll probably see these at garden stores. Sometimes, I don't know that I've ever seen them at like a Walmart or a Home Depot. Most likely these are going to be online or at an actual garden center. These are, now this is an old pair. These are my absolute favorite pruners, and there's two big reasons why. One, they keep a really nice edge. Once I sharpen them, it lasts definitely for a whole season. And the other part is, I love how easy they come apart. And that's really where we're going to start today, is when you're selecting a pruner. I want you to think about, so here's a plastic, it clearly says made in China on there. This tool, while it may be cheap to buy, these guys they're not going to last for you. The steel is low quality, they're going to chip, they won't stay sharp, they're probably going to rust, you can't take them apart. So there's really not much you can do for these. If you have a pair of these, use them till they're done and upgrade to something a little bit better. These are actually a no-name brand. They don't even have a brand name on them. So if you're looking at pruners, look at how they come apart, look at the type of material that's used to make them, and try to make a quality selection there. So kind of next up the list here, or you're going to find some of these like Fiskars that are like this. Be aware of like latches that close like this. That's plastic. That's not a reliable solution to, closure. It's difficult. You can't adjust it. If you were to take these apart, they're a little bit difficult to take apart and get lined back up. You can technically, it has one nut, which I love the design of one single thing. Compared to like these are very common. You probably have a pair of these. These are on my desk to be restored. I believe they're my neighbors. And I'll take them apart and shine them up, and they'll be great. We're going to get rid of all the rust and stuff like that, and we'll talk about that here as we go. But these come apart with you have to hold a screw here and a screw here and take that apart, and then you got a different size nut here, and it's just, these are a mess. Look, go for simple. This is simple. These are the way to go. So all of these here are bypass, which you probably talk about that in your classes. These are bypass, which just means it's like a scissor. The blade, they pass each other, compared to like an anvil style, where these might be so rusty. So the blade actually chomps to a flat surface. That's why they call this is the anvil on this. So a couple different things to look out there for on those. Bypass is going to be pretty much your best way to go. These are generally for woodsier and larger material. And if you need to cut that, you're probably going to want a lopper anyway, because you got more leverage. So stick with the bypass, but these come apart, and I'm going to take this one apart here and show you how we take care of this tool. believe that's a metric 10, but I've got a little adjustable wrench here on the bench. All of these come apart a little bit different, but the Coronas, which the ones I'm recommending, all come apart pretty much like this. You're going to pull that out. Now these were recently restored, so they're nice and lubed up. And that spring just screws off right there. Okay, now if this were a rusty tool, then what you're going to want to do is clean it, and then you're going to want to hit it with some sandpaper and try to get rid of all of your rust. This one's in great shape, but just sandpaper. Now remember, the number matters. You're probably going to want to use a 200 grit. 100 is probably too aggressive. You could start out with that if you've got some bad rust, but you're going to want to refine yourself down. 200 grit would be fine for most light rust that you're going to see on things. If you had some rust like this, some 200 grit on there would be just fine. If you've got 400 or 600, you could even step up from there if you'd like to. And then there's a couple things about the geometry here on this that you want to be aware of. On a bypass pruner, the back of this needs to remain perfectly flat. And so you're going to, and I have a full video on this. We're not going to have time to go into every single tool, but if you want to check out a video where I did a restoration on this exact tool, I have a YouTube channel. It's Eagle Run 23, just Eagle Run 23, all one word. And I have a bunch of breakdowns of some of these tools that are here, and a more in-depth on what to do here. So the back of this is going to remain flat, and then the angle is on this side. And you can see that here, that shiny part. That's your angle. That's your cutting edge. This is the part that you want to sharpen. So check around the house and see what you have. This is it's made by Norton Abrasives. Got this on Amazon. We call this an India red stone. This one was also bought several years ago on Amazon. These are combination stones, and that just means that they have a coarse and a fine. This one, being a little bit bigger, is nice. It has a coarse and a fine. And all you're going to do on these is you're going to take that angle, you're going to hold it on here, you're going to match that angle, and you're going to draw your knife across there. Usually we use a little bit of honing oil. You could even use like a Ballistol or WD-40 if that's all you got. Some of them can even be used with water. So you're going to come across here several times. You're going to make sure your edge is all good. And then this tool just goes back together. You're going to spray it down with some Ballistol and keep it clean and keep it oiled. WD-40 works fine. And you can keep your tool in tip-top shape. So I do recommend having a stone. These are the same stones that you could sharpen a pocket knife with. It's the exact same idea. This would be too small for a kitchen knife, but sharpening pocket knives, all of those are just done with these stones. Around $25, $35, depending on the size and what grit you have. But a $35, $25 stone would last you for a really long time, and we would use these to take care of a lot of tools. One last thing when you're putting these back together is be aware that the tension is controlled by that nut. So you can kind of fine tune how much tension you're giving yourself by tightening and loosening that nut. So keep that in mind when you're putting those back together. Similar pruners have a similar system. If you were to tighten this nut, it would give you more tension on that. So, all right, so let's move on from pruners and let's jump into loppers, which is just a bigger version of this. So the construction of this is really similar. This is a bypass construction, and it looks as if I put these away dirty. Let's fix that real quick. Okay, so I used these the other day, and it looks like I did not clean them. I keep a spray bottle that I use with just soapy water in it, but there's nothing wrong with using a spray cleaner, but usually just soapy water works just fine. And let's spray that down and get that sap off of there. This is something that you're going to want to do after each use, because you put them away dirty once, and that's probably fine, but you put them away dirty time after time, And then you've got a problem. That sap and dirt, they all hold moisture, and moisture is the enemy of metal. So these were in pretty good shape. I can see I have a little bit of rust down here and here. That's common, that's just kind of part of the game. You just gotta kind of stay on it. So these come apart the exact same way as the pruners. You have the same philosophy here. Keep that back flat on the stone, and then the angle is sharpened there. You're gonna run the whole thing. It's a long handle, but you're gonna run that whole thing on there. You will see people who have little cheaters where they try to run it across the edge of their pruner. So you're gonna see people who have like little cheaters like this that they run over the top of their pruners, and it's tempting to do this, but let me show you why this is a bad idea. Okay, so to the whiteboard of knowledge here, we're gonna draw this tool at an angle like this and an angle like this. So the side view here, you've got your blade, and then there is the bevel, and then the blade comes down. So we've just made this blade really thick so that you can see this is the part that you're sharpening. So when you were to run your stone across this edge, you're putting the bevel, which is that shiny part right there, you're putting that right here. Now, the problem with using a cheater is that it has abrasives on two sides. You're going to be removing metal on this side and this side. So what you're going to end up with is, instead of a sharp point like this, you're going to end up with a point that has a bevel here and here. Now that might seem fine, that works for a pocket knife, but in a kitchen knife, you're just cutting straight through the material. In fact, this is the type of tip on an edge that the anvil cutter would have, because it is chopping into the material instead of slicing it. So when you put the other side, which is this flat side, when you put that side here next to that, you now have a gap between the cutting edge and the flat side on the other side of your pruners. So what that means is material is going to get stuck in there and you're not going to have clean cuts. That's why it's important to keep that backside flat and then only put an angle right there. Hope that makes sense. So these are just a larger version of those. Keep the back flat, put the angle on, and people think that if I just open this up and I just run this over there, it may work once, it may work twice, but you're going to be removing material on the back side of that, and you're not going to have a good cutting edge. Now the cool part is that you could fix it theoretically by removing enough material on this side. It is fixable, but most likely you've done irreparable damage to that blade, and they would probably have to be replaced. All right, so here we have a cheap, looks like Garden Pals. I believe that's from Walmart. This is a cheap pair of hedge trimmers, and this is my pair that I've sharpened and sharpened and sharpened, and they cut great. I don't use them that much. This is on my list of tools to upgrade at some point, and let me show you what would be a great choice. Anytime you're at a garage sale or a thrift store, check out these vintage, beautiful hedge trimmers. Now these belong to Tom and Mary, and I did a full restoration on these. They were in pretty rough shape, and we did a full restoration on them. That's another one of those videos that is on my channel. And unfortunately, the coronavirus hit, and they've been in my garage here for quite a while. I need to get them back to them, but I have not run into them. So Tom and Mary, we need to get you your hedge trimmers back. These are beautiful, and they're super sharp. Backs are flat. I oiled them up, and they've been in this shape, sitting around on the shelf, ready to go. Nice sharp edge on there. Okay, so we're going to transition here to some wood care. We have wooden handles on garden spades, on little axes, hatchets, We'll talk about that guy in a minute. He's got a wooden handle, but a wooden handle here, same as on a shovel. A lot of times you'll find that they have a really shiny, glossy a polymer or a shellac that's on there. When you buy a brand new shovel, the first thing you're going to want to do is sand that stuff off. Sand it off and get rid of all that, because it changes the way that the wood dries. And a lot of times you'll see a shovel that's been setting in the, sometimes if you have a shovel that's setting outside in the weather and it shrinks and contracts, and then you'll feel it and it has those little edges on it. Sand that shellac away. If your handle is damaged, sand that away. Get a smooth finish, and then all you're gonna need is some boiled linseed oil. There's a couple of rules about boiled linseed oil. This stuff is, there's higher quality versions. This is just available at an Ace Hardware or a Home Depot, but there are higher qualities. There's a double boiled linseed oil that works great. This is one that I've had for a good long time. A bottle like this will last you a long time. But let's go ahead and put a fresh coat of oil on this handle, and we'll talk about some handle care. So just put your little towel down. You can drizzle some oil on there. And it's really satisfying to see just what that does. There's no stain in this at all. That is just the natural grain. Wow, look at that. The natural grain coming out. Make sure you get the ends really well. A lot of drying happens on the end grain. So you're gonna wanna oil your handles at least annually. If they get left outside, you may have to do it a little bit more frequently. But a wooden handle, if you take care of it, there's no reason it won't last for years and years. And you can just find a replacement wooden handle a lot of times. I always think it's sad when tools get thrown away, because most likely they can be restored and they can still be serviceable, especially if they're, a vintage pair made with high quality steel. These are made in the USA, and this is a pair of hedge trimmers that needs to be used. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. So this was a brand new little hatchet. I think I got this for Christmas, and it had that really shiny shellac on it. I sanded all that off. There's a full video on this on my YouTube channel, and we've just been applying boiled linseed oil to it about once a week. And that's when I start off with a fresh one, I'm gonna put it on a couple of times, maybe do it 2 or 3 days in a row, and then maybe hit it again a week later. And then it's been maybe a month or so, so hit it again. And then that's gonna really just set all those oils in there so that the wood can protect itself, so that it can stay full and it doesn't dry out and get all cracky on us. And making sure to put oil there in the top as well. Because if this shrinks and it loses, then this bit is no longer safe on the end of that, and you have a dangerous tool at that point. So this I sharpened with a file. You could sharpen these with a file or with a stone, but this larger bevel is a little bit easier. If you have a file, if you got a stone, you can use a stone to sharpen these. But big tools like this are nice. Files make quick work of removing a lot of material really quickly there. And so we've got that axe handle looking good. It's all nice and sharp. And I've been chopping some kindling up for the fire pit with that guy. So anytime I can find tools with wooden handles, I usually gravitate to those. These were found, I think, at a Home Depot, and they had a wood handle. I usually gravitate to those. I painted one of them, the wooden handles. I painted it pink for my daughter. My wife has one, I have one, and my son has one. And we've been experimenting with putting an edge on our trowel. You could put this in the vise or maybe clamp it down, but you're gonna run a file on this, and you can see how thick the material, see how thick that blade is. And then down here, you can see that I've put a bit of an edge on there. And I really like this because when I'm planting or doing weeding, that edge right there, I did it because I'm right-handed. I did it on the left side, and I really enjoyed it. I think I would do this again, and I would maybe recommend you guys try it as well. But that's done with a file. It's super easy. These are most of these projects I'm showing you are 5-minute projects. Even taking apart those pruners, unless it's got a ton of rust on it, it's a pretty simple fix. So let me show you on a full-size shovel what a bevel looks like on there. All right, so my camera, I'm not gonna be able to show you all of this, but this is a tempered USA made shovel. It is probably 40 years old, and I did a full restoration on this, including beveling the edge all the way around. Now, I've only used this shovel a couple of times since it's been restored, because I've been mostly showing it off when I do either YouTube videos, or I did a tool class for master gardeners, and so it's kind of nice to have a bit of a showpiece. This guy's in pretty good shape, and its wooden handle is, we're thinking it's probably 40 years old, and it's in great shape. We just sanded it down, did the boiled linseed oil on it. It probably could use another coat since it's been probably a season, but if you paint your shovel like this, the main reason why I did it was to protect for rust, because I sanded it all the way down. But the other reason is it makes it super easy to identify your stuff. You could even put like a stripe on your handle and tape off and spray paint that so that you know a clear way. Instead of, you know, etching your name and everything, you can just kind of have a color. There's going to be no mistaking at those garden work days that this is my shovel. Now, I did restore a couple of shovels for master gardeners, and you might see them if they're using them. I hope that they use them. They kind of get so pretty you don't want to use them, but you might see some that are painted similarly to this, so I might need to pick a new color, or you can paint yours whatever color you want, but it makes it really easy to know which tools are yours when they're painted. So on a big shovel like that, I used a flap disc on a grinder. You definitely could get by with using sandpaper, but it's a lot of metal. Sandpaper is probably going to work better for your smaller projects and your little hand tools. You could do that exact same process to a rake, to shovels, different types of spades, any sort of diggers. Putting an edge on the end of those is going to make them work nicer. It's going to make them easier to keep clean. All that oil on your handle is going to, the mud's not going to stick on that, and it makes them nice and last long. So this is a Japanese weeder. I wrote an article about this in The Root a couple episodes ago, but this thing is really awesome, and it is wicked sharp, and I need to make a sheath for it because I've cut myself with it already. But this is a little, I believe it's a Negari, Japanese weeder, and you just use it like this, like a sickle almost, and you dig down into the ground, and it just pops those roots, and it really makes fast work when you're weeding. Keeping my tomatoes and peppers nice and weed free. I really enjoyed this. Got it on Amazon, $30 range, and I highly recommend them as a weeder. So a nice pair of leather gloves is great. They're probably gonna be too hot in the summertime. There's a company called Mechanics that makes like a mechanic style glove. Those actually are really great because they're designed so that you can put like they just have a lot of flexibility. They're tactile because mechanics are putting nuts and bolts on things and moving wrenches and using their hands on a finer degree. Sometimes I find that gloves take that away, and I like the Mechanics brand. They're a little bit more, they're more like $20 for a pair of gloves, where you can sometimes find a couple dollar cheap pair of gloves, but I like to have those. If you see those and you want to try them out, I recommend them. Okay, so in closing, let's talk about just some of the tools that you need. I've mentioned a lot of these, but most likely you already have a lot of this stuff. There's probably a file in your garage. You may have a whetstone. It's possible that you have boiled linseed oil. You could use a tongue oil as well. Those work really, that works as well. I prefer the boiled linseed oil. If you can find a double boiled or more of a natural product, this one has a dryer in it that helps it not be sticky. And so they say not to get this stuff on your hands, but I've had it on my hands before. It's no big deal. Then a lubricating oil, WD-40 does, oh, I got a magnet on there. WD-40 does work. It's not the best thing to go with, but it does work, and if that's what you got, then use it. I won't give you any criticism on that. If you're gonna buy something, check out this Ballistol. This stuff is really great on almost any metal, and they have it in a spray and in like a squirt spray, and then like the aerosol. It's really easy to just, when you're spraying down, so say you got your tool all cleaned up, you've already used it, you just hit it with the oil, and just rub that in, and that's pretty much it. Keep those things looking good, working nice. So you probably already have a lot of this stuff. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. You can check out Eagle Run 2-3 on YouTube for some more in-depth looks at some of these things. And we do all sorts of videos on there. It's not all garden. Just a small part of it is garden. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and enjoy your class. I absolutely loved my time in class. It was so stressful and so busy, but it was also super rewarding. And now looking back on it, it was just a neat little window of time. So, all right. Thank you guys. We'll see you later.